So let's quickly review what we learned about Surrealism. We know that Surrealism emphasizes the subconscious and that they like to explore dreams, the element of chance, as a way to navigate multiple levels of reality. And because of that, they rejected logic and reasoning. Right? They were all about dreams, the subconscious, getting to this higher place. We know that two very influential people in the Surrealist movement were Sigmund Freud, the psychoanalyst, and Andre Breton, who wrote quite literally the Surrealist Manifesto. There's a big range of Surrealist work, from representational Surrealism, who we saw with Magritte, René Magritte, the artist, and a lot of Dali's works too. So these are highly rendered, very realistic, realistically drawn and painted artworks, right? Even though they're of dreamy-like states. And then there were also abstract surrealists who sometimes had more flat artworks, and others still use that high level of realism, but with more organic, sort of strange forms. There were also a lot of women surrealists who were often the girlfriends of the male surrealists, but who tended to explore sort of what it was like to be a woman at that time in their work, and their themes were a little bit different than the men. Also a lot of fun surrealist sculpture, right? Sort of absurd, combining things that don't belong together or things that are unexpected. But what we really want to focus on today, and I know they touched on it a little bit in the video, are surrealist visual devices. So devices that they used in their artworks to achieve these dreamlike states, scenes, situations. And there are 5 of them. The first is scale. So taking something that we normally see as being one scale and drastically altering the scale. So here in this room, all of these objects would normally be really small in this room, and now they're huge, right? So altering the scale. Here, same sort of thing, taking this apple and making it occupy the entire space of the room. Very Alice in Wonderland. Am I right? Am I right? Dislocation. So taking something that normally belongs in one place and putting it where it doesn't belong. So a good example would be the space in this landscape, right? It's just almost like dislocated, smacked on there like a sticker. And in this Frida Kahlo work, taking a column and putting it in place of her spine, right? The third is levitation, so making something float or fly that normally wouldn't. This is a really beautiful example by Salvador Dali, having this pomegranate where the fish and then the tigers are coming out of that, and they're all sort of flying in space. And even though these elephants technically aren't flying, that tension of them walking on those stilts still makes it feel like they're floating. So juxtaposition, combining two things that don't go together and putting them together. So putting a butterfly on a windmill, or putting a lobster on a phone. Very similar to dislocation. Really, with a lot of these, there's overlap, right? Because obviously the scale is also being changed here, and it's being dislocated, and it's being juxtaposed to the windmill. And then the last one is transformation or metamorphosis. So having one thing start off looking one way and then showing the process of it changing into something else, or having it be changed into something else. So this example here on the left, this is an umbrella, but then we see that that is the skirt of her dress, and then it is transforming into a woman. And here just having these clocks sort of melt, right, and they're changing. Clocks don't normally look like that. Really famous painting, you gotta know it, Salvador Dali, The Persistence of Memory. So what the heck is our project, Miss O? So your project is going to be to create a piece of art that incorporates at least 2 surrealist visual devices, which shouldn't be too difficult, so at least 2, to make a dream world or scene. And you have a couple different options with materials because we all have different things. So your first is collage, the second is drawing, and the third is using mixed materials. So for collage, you want to use text, images, color, paper swatches, mostly from magazines, I'd say. You could also use books. You could also use regular construction paper. Um, and I'm looking for a dense, dreamy scene, right? It's not enough to just put a couple images together, slap them down, and call it a day. Something else with collage that's going to be really important is your craftsmanship. So cutting the images out entirely, like really getting to the border, not just leaving big clunky squares of everything, making sure that the scene feels convincing and realistic, just how the paintings are that we've been looking at in Surrealism. A tip, if you use collage, do not glue down each piece as you are cutting it. Arrange your collage entirely, moving around the pieces, and then, and only then, once you are satisfied with your composition, glue things down. And that's because in my experience with collage and in my experience in doing with students, you often have new ideas towards the end. So like, oh, what if I put this here? What if I put this in relation to this? And then if you've already glued it down, you can't really change it as much at that point. This example is by a freshman in high school, and she had a lot more time than you guys will have, but I am confident that all of you can come up with something equally as fabulous, if not more fabulous, because you're all wonderful. Number 2 would be drawing. So if you don't have a lot of art materials at home, or you don't have a lot of magazines, or maybe you're just not interested in collage, you can just do a traditional drawing, right? So this is one of my sketches that I do in my sketchbook. I really love Surrealism, and I'm inspired by this movement, so I tend to work a lot this way. But it is amazing what you can do with one drawing tool and some shading. I just used one 4B pencil for this entire thing, and that's it. So you don't need a lot to make a really fantastic artwork. And it doesn't have to be just graphite pencil. You could use pen and ink and use your hatching, cross-hatching, and stippling mark-making techniques. You could use color pencils, or maybe just one color pencil. Maybe you want to do blue monochromatic or red monochromatic. So essentially this option is just using limited materials and having them be some sort of drawing material. And the third is mixed media. So using a combination of materials. So maybe you want to do some collage, but maybe you want to draw over the collage, or maybe you want to do pencil but with some watercolor. This is for the person that is excited to have the sampler platter, right? So you're like, I'm not sure what I'm going to use, but I think I might want to combine several things together. I am not expecting and not requiring for anyone to go out and buy anything right now, so only use these things if you already have them. Please, please, please stay home, social distance, do not go to Blick or Michael's to go buy things for this project. So what size paper should you be using? Now, it really just depends on what you're doing. Use your best judgment. We have 6 classes to complete this, so I'm not expecting anything ginormous like 18 by 24, but I'm also expecting you to be working diligently during each class. So I would say, as a guide, if you're doing collage, strictly collage, work a bit larger, since you're not going to spend as much time rendering and doing that type of level of detail. So maybe something like 1114. You do not have to use drawing paper like we would use in the art room. Your base could be newspaper, it could be construction paper, it could be printer paper that you've taped together. It's all going to get covered with the collage anyway, so it doesn't matter too much. If you're going to be doing drawing, depending on the level of detail, I wouldn't go any bigger than 9 inches by 12 inches. That little drawing that you saw me do above is 9 inches by 12 inches, and it took me about 7 hours. So if you're doing a drawing, I'm expecting a high level of detail, so I would say work smaller. And if you're doing mixed media, it just depends on what type of mixed media you're doing. If you're doing something that's really immediate, right, so something that doesn't require as much detail all around, then work larger. And if you're still planning on doing something that has a high level of detail, work a little bit smaller, like 9 by 12. You can also, if you would like, choose to do two smaller pieces instead of doing one larger piece. So a smaller size would be like the size of the sketchbook page that I give you guys. You're welcome to use the paper that's in there, or you can use your own paper, whatever you feel comfortable with. And last, where should you start? So one thing that I love about Surrealism is that they do embrace this element of chance, right? And so I don't want you to overplan this. I don't want you to be like, this is going to go here and this is going to go here, and I'm going to have a flower and a person. I think that really kills the spirit of Surrealism. So what I would rather you do is start with one image, start with one thing, and then just build your drawing or collage or whatever you're making from there. Right? So just let one thing lead you to another. Just really immerse yourself in the process. And I would have a starting point though, as you're working, like maybe have something to guide you. And a couple of things or a couple of options that I would give you as a starting point are either a utopia, right? So a place where everything is beautiful and perfect, a dystopia, where everything is sort of upside down and not going right, a story that you are retelling. So this could be like, I want to tell the story of Cinderella through my collage in my own way with my own imagery. Or it could be some sort of experience that you have lived. So I want to tell the story of when I was standing on top of a mountain in Big Sur overlooking the ocean, and I could hear the birds and hear the sounds of the waves, and that is what I want my collage to be, right? So have some sort of starting point so you're not just totally out in the open like, oh, what am I doing? But at the same time, don't overly plan like where everything is going to go.